All right, our warm up, they're asking us to, this from yesterday, use the information provided to write the vertex form of the equation of each parabola, identify the axis of symmetry and the vertex. So the first thing we have to identify is the vertex, because that is one of the keys to writing this in vertex form. And remember that vertex form is y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. The vertex is going to give us that h and k, so it's going to give us two of the three pieces of information we need to know. So what are the coordinates of that vertex? -5, -5. So my vertex, the ordered pair, -5, -5. And again, the significance there is that represents h and k in my vertex form. So that's giving me two of the three numbers I'm missing. Now they ask us for axis of symmetry, so we need to identify that. It doesn't necessarily give us the equation, but it's important for us to know that that axis of symmetry is that line that goes through the vertex. So it shares the x coordinate of the vertex. So in this case, it would be x equals -5 would be our axis of symmetry. So the other piece of information we need for this equation is our a value. And we said for our a value, we can use like a slope type idea just for the first set of points after the vertex. So I have these 2 points here, so I can find out how many do I go up and how many do I go over from there. So from my vertex, I go up 3 and over 1. So my a value is 3/1, which would just be 3. So there is the third missing piece of my equation. So I'm going to fill in my a, my h, and my k into the equation. So y equals 3 times the quantity x minus a -5 quantity squared plus -5. So I've filled in my a, my h, and my k. Now I need to clean it up. I have that double negative inside, so y equals 3 times the quantity x plus 5 squared. And instead of writing plus -5, we would just say -5. So that would be the equation for that parabola in that graph. Number 2, what would be the ordered pair that would represent our vertex there? 5, -1. So our vertex, 5, -1. And again, the significance of that is that that is representing my h and my k. They ask us for axis of symmetry, so we need to address that. Again, it's the vertical line that goes through our vertex. So in this case, it is the line x equals 5. And then we need that a value. So from my vertex to my first set of points, in this case, I'm going down 2 and over 1. So my a value is -2/1, or just -2. Now I have all three pieces of missing information here. So y equals -2 times the quantity x minus 5 squared plus -1. So y equals -2 times the quantity x minus 5 squared minus 1. That would be the equation of that parabola. So as you can tell by the title of today's notes, we're going to get into reviewing factoring now, which is a huge part of quadratics. So we're going to review the steps that we need to go through for factoring and then do a couple problems together. So the first step, we have to check for GCF. And factor it out if there is one. Remembering GCF stands for greatest common factor, and our GCF can be a number, it can be a variable, and it can be a combination of numbers and variables. Anything that I can divide out of each term. Step number 2, identify the values of A, B, and C. Now today we're switching back to standard form. So we're talking about ax squared plus bx plus c. So a is going to be the value in front of the x squared term, b is going to be the value in front of the x term, and c is going to be the constant at the end. Three, we're going to use the X method to find the factors. If you remember the X method, we draw that X where the top of the X is A times C. The bottom of the X is B. And then we have factor 1 on one side, factor 2. And the thing we need to remember is we do have to make sure and divide by A to get those factors. And then step 4 is just going to be, we have to write out the two expressions using the factors. And you have to remember in step 4, if you did take out a GCF, that does need to appear down in your answer. You need to bring that back down. It is part of the answer. It doesn't just go away. So when you get to that step 4, if you took out a GCF, and again, a GCF can be a number, a variable, or a combination of numbers and variables, it does need to appear in that answer. All right, so we're going to look at the example 2x squared plus 6x minus 8. So again, our first step, we got to check for a GCF. Is there anything that I can divide out of each of those terms? The same thing out of each of those terms? I can divide a 2 out of all those. So I have a GCF of 2. So I'm going to come and divide each term by 2. So I have 2 times the quantity x squared plus 3x minus 4. So it's that value inside the parentheses there that I need to factor. Again, the GCF will come down into the answer at the end. So now I need to identify my A, my B, and my C. Again, I'm only looking at what's inside of the parentheses. So what would be the value of A in this case? Just 1. The A is what's in front of. What is the value of B? And C? -4. So now I'm going to set up my X. A times C goes at the top. B goes at the bottom. So 1 times -4 is -4. B is 3. So I need 2 numbers that multiply together to make -4 and add up to -3. Because the sum is positive, we know the larger factor has to be positive. And if at this point you know what 2 numbers that is, you can write them in. You do not have to do this next step. I do this next step for those that are struggling to find the factors. So our first one would be -1 times 4 equals -4. -1 plus 4 equals 3. And I realize we only had a couple choices of how to make 4 through multiplication. But that is the combination that makes both our product and our sum true at the same time. So we have a -1 on one side, a +4 on the other. It does not matter which one you put on which side. But you do need to make sure and go in and divide by A. Now A is a 1, but still get in that habit because you are going to get into problems where A is greater than 1. So that would still be 4 and -1. Now again, this is where we have to make sure we can't just ignore the GCF. It still has to be a part of. So that GCF, that 2, is still a part of our answer. So we have 2 times the quantity. One of my factors is going to be x minus 1. The other factor is x plus 4. But do not forget to bring down your GCF. So I'm going to do 4 and 5 with you. We'll do a couple more together just to make sure we're back in the habit of doing these, and then I'll give you some time to work on the others on your own. So in number 4, we have a squared minus 10a plus 24. So again, that first step. Is there a GCF? Is there something that I can divide out of each of those terms? No, so we're going to put none. The reason I'm writing it up there, I want to make sure, I want to show that I did check. I just didn't ignore that step. But because the A value is already 1 in this one, there's nothing I can take out. So what would be the values of A, B, and C in this instance? A is 1, what is B? And C, 24. So we set up our X, A times C at the top, B at the bottom. So 1 times 24 is 24, B is -10. The only way that I can get a positive product and a negative sum is by having both factors negative. That's the only way you can get those two things to happen at the same time. So I'm looking for two negative numbers. And again, I know right now some of you totally know what the numbers are and go ahead and fill them in. This next step I'm doing is for those that may be struggling with finding those factors. So if we do -1 times -24, we get positive 24. -1 plus -24 is -25. -2 times -12 is positive 24. -2 plus -12 is -14. -3 times -8 is positive 24. -3 plus -8 is -11. We're getting very close, but not there yet. -4 times -6 is positive 24. -4 plus -6 is -10. So it took us a few to get there, but these are the two numbers that match both the product and the sum. So one side is -4, the other side is -6. Again, it doesn't matter which one you put on which side. Go in and divide by the a value, which in this case is 1, so it's not changing. I don't have to worry about bringing down a GCF because there wasn't one. So one of my factors is going to be a minus 4. The other factor is going to be a minus 6. So that would be my factored form for a squared minus 10a plus 24. All right, number 5, 4n squared plus 24n plus 32. Is there a GCF in this problem? What is the GCF here? So I can divide a 4 out of each of those terms. So we have 4 times the quantity, n squared plus 6n plus 8. So again, it's what's in the parentheses that we are going to factor. So now we have to identify our A, our B, and our C. So what is the value of A in this problem? B, C. So I need two numbers that multiply together. So A times C is 1 times 8 is 8. So two numbers that multiply together to make 8 and add up to 6. And again, I know right now some of you know that off the top of your head and can fill it in, and great. For those that maybe it's not coming as quickly, everything is positive, so I know both of my factors are positive. So 1 times 8 equals 8. 1 plus 8 is 9, so that doesn't work. 2 times 4 equals 8. 2 plus 4 equals 6. So there is the combination that makes both sides true. One side is a 2, the other is a 4. Again, our A value here is 1, so it's not changing. But again, don't forget your GCF. That needs to come down into our answer. So we have 4, and then one parenthesis is going to be n plus 2. The other parenthesis is going to be n plus 4. All right, you have 10 problems on the next page to practice. Again, sometimes the GCF is going to be just a letter. Sometimes the GCF will be a number. And sometimes the GCF will be a combination of a number and a letter. whatever you can divide out evenly from each term is going to be your GCF.